Hello friends, welcome back to GM Philosophy in the Morning. I'm the GM Philosopher. Today we're talking about what not to do when running a D&D campaign. There are a lot of things you should not do. And in this video, I'm going to give you basically my top 10 favorite do not do these things. I think that if you can avoid doing these 10 things, your D&D campaigns are going to be just way, way, way better. Starting with number 1, don't try to win against the players. I think that the GM versus player mentality is very dangerous. It can really alienate players. It can make them feel like this game is frustrating and it's a hostile environment. We want to work together to create amazing stories of these characters. We want to tell the stories of these characters. We want to create incredible narratives, intellectual art. This can't be done, though, with an us versus them mentality. We have to be working together. And even though, as the GM, you are running the game, running the villains, running all the bad guys, doesn't mean it's you versus the players, and staying away from this mindset is definitely going to be best. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think about that. Tell me if you ever think there's a situation where this doesn't apply. I'd be interested in hearing about that. Number 2. Don't make player choices meaningless. Players want to know that they have control over the destiny of their character, at least to a certain point. Agency and free will really come into play here. And when you take that away from players and you make it feel like their characters and their arcs didn't matter. My dog's barking in the background. But when you take away the meaning of their choices and make it feel like it doesn't matter, basically you're left with a meaningless feeling campaign, especially a campaign where maybe players might think to themselves, what was the point of us even doing that? Why didn't, if you were going to have the big god come down and fix it all anyway, why did we go through all that? Like, what was the whole point of it? And this is valid. We want to make sure to structure campaigns so that there is a point and choices aren't meaningless. And that leads us to point number 3. Don't worship the rules. Rules are guidelines or structure. It's like a language you're all speaking while you tell the story. But relying too much on the rules, worshiping them, making them more important than the narrative itself, I think this takes away from the experience. Drop a comment, let me know what you think about that. Some people might disagree. Number 4, don't over-prepare to the point of rigidity. Personally, when I look back on my gaming, experiences, probably the top 10 best sessions I ever ran were mostly all improvisation, whereas I can definitely say how some of the worst sessions I've ever run were always basically those sessions where I over-prepared and I got too many predetermined ideas for what was going to happen, and then I tried to force those ideas. This is, I've learned through experience, not a good way to do it, so don't over-prepare. If anything, prepare just a little bit and then let improvisation take you the rest of the way. Number 5, don't ignore emotional resonance. Emotional resonance is so important. A lot of game masters I would say, are focused more on maybe the combat mechanics, or they're focused more on trying to have a consistent world, which is important. And, maybe they're even more concerned with, the local factions, coming up with cool names, coming up with cool map location things. These are all really cool, and these are all really important. But the truth is, if we do not have emotional resonance, then the game is going to be much less potent, much less powerful than it could be. So in building all of these awesome things, don't forget to build in some emotional impact, emotional resonance. Make an NPC actually take steps to get the players to care about them. When you're role-playing that animal companion, build in some emotional attachment. When you're building the villains, create emotional impact by making them really, evil, the types of villains you love to hate. These kinds of things really matter. Number 6, don't front-load lore. So massive world and lore dumps can bore players. You give them 50 pages of lore to read before the campaign starts. That's a lot of lore, but that's better than you sitting down and being like, chapter 1, and then you go through an hour of lore, basically front-loading it. This can be a lot. I do understand you have to have lore, but I prefer to trickle it in over the course of the game. And yeah, there's an argument to be made for like, well, it's not realistic. The players aren't going to be able to roleplay their characters the best if they don't have all the lore front loaded. This is fair, but it's also important to maybe pick and choose what is important for the player character, and then don't like just overload them. Give them the option, maybe set up, you know, a Discord page where they can go in and read your massive amounts of lore if they want to, but don't like make it a prerequisite, because it can be a lot. So I think that massive upfront lore dumps kind of a bad thing to stay away from. Drop a comment, let me know what you think about that. Do you disagree? I think some people might disagree. Number 7, don't neglect session 0. Session 0 is really important. It's really important for setting the tone, boundaries, expectations, setting the theme of the campaign, just having a dialogue about what kind of game you all want to run together. There's a lot of things you can do in session 0, but these are probably the most important things. Don't skip it. If you skip session 0, you're going to end up with blind spots, or you're highly likely to end up with blind spots later on. Even dealing with things like, you know, what are the play styles, what things are people not comfortable with. Discussing these things beforehand can save you a lot of trouble down the road. And so don't neglect session 0. Number 8, don't let perfectionism paralyze you. So a perfectionist mindset is going to be paralyzing because it can keep you from believing in a thing and moving forward with it. So you might plan out this dungeon and you think to yourself, oh, I want to get it meticulously perfect. But then if it's not perfect, if it doesn't feel perfect, you might say, it's not ready yet. And you might not even run it, right? You might even cancel the session because you feel like it's just not ready. You may be not launching your D&D game because you are afraid that the imperfections are going to take away from it too much. But let me tell you, friend, nothing's ever going to be perfect. And to be really honest, having a great starting point and then just launching from there is usually a recipe for fantastic success. It doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't have to make complete sense. You might be like really second guessing yourself. Like, does this dungeon even make sense? Do the room layouts make sense? Would this dungeon even be here? Right? And fair enough. You want to make a consistent world, but to a point you get diminishing returns on like worrying about it. If anything, just go into it. And when the players be like, this dungeon doesn't make sense. Why are there rooms here? You can be like, roll a history check. And then maybe they roll. And then maybe you say something like, it would seem that the layout doesn't really make sense. And your characters, you know, despite their best attempts, can't really find a good reason to explain it. Maybe that is a bit of a mystery, right? You might even rule it off like that. Let them wonder. Make them think, oh, the GM didn't make a dungeon that doesn't make sense. The GM made a dungeon. The dungeon doesn't make sense. It's a mystery. Why? Right? Maybe it turns out the person who designed it was insane. I don't know. Not you, in-game. Whoever designed the dungeon. The king of the old age or whatever, right? And that takes us to number 9. Don't keep the spotlight on the same players. Spread it around. This is very much something that can be easy to do if you have like 1 or 2 players who are really comfortable in the spotlight. But if they steal too much of it, you're going to have other players who don't get as much screen time, and that's not cool. Try to spread that love around. Give all the players screen time. And this leads us to number 10. Don't be afraid of failure. Make it interesting. So when I say failure, I mean you as a game master, you might have plans. You might have a villain who's going to launch this big attack, but maybe he fumbles his roll. What does that mean? You might think to yourself, this is going to ruin everything I planned on. I imagined this whole like big attack he was going to do with these missiles that were going to shoot out of his eyes or whatever it is. And then you might roll a fumble and might think to yourself, oh my gosh, this is going to ruin my whole... That's okay. Let it get ruined, because the important thing is letting the narrative live, letting the narrative breathe. And when you don't constrict things and you go ahead and let those failures happen and let that tell the story that you didn't even see coming, I'm telling you, your stories are probably going to be better. Anyway, those are my 10 tips, 10 things not to do if you want to run an awesome D&D session, things to avoid while running D&D. Here at GM Philosophy, we're all about empowering game masters to run better games. If this sounds like the place for you, hit that thumbs up button and that subscribe button. Watch more of my awesome videos, and hey, I'll see you awesome people on the next one.